whoever and wherever you are.
You're listening to We Hate Small Talk
With Cindy
and Emin. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode, the second episode of We Hate Small Talk. We're so excited that you decided to tune in for another. And today we're going to be talking all about adulting.
Yeah, so I think this week's topic hits especially close to home for our current situation because age-wise, Eamon and I have been adults for a couple of years now, but I think mentally we're not quite there yet. And yeah, especially because of the pandemic, I think that a lot of people have, like us, moved back in with our parents, and that's kind of been a strange situation to navigate.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I remember last year being so excited to, before the pandemic hit, obviously, being so excited to like graduate and move into downtown life with, I hadn't found a roommate yet, but hopefully I was going to find one, and just like live my best life alone without any parents. But flash forward to May of 2021, I am still at home living with my parents, and it's been over a year now. Honestly, it hasn't been that bad. Like, I know a lot of my friends say like they feel like they are suffocated at home, and I actually had a couple of them move out during COVID, just like downtown, because they couldn't take it at home anymore. And thankfully, I feel really blessed that my parents do give me that space to like be an adult and just have my independence, and they don't bother me that much. I love how I said they don't bother me, but yeah, like I feel like pretty happy at home. How about you, Cindy?
Yeah, I think what you said is really true because I moved back in as well. And I think like that freedom that we had while we were living together alone, you kind of were the boss of your own self, and you could dictate, when you woke up or, when you went to bed. But here you're kind of living under your parents' roof. And I actually live quite close to my old high school. And so in a way, it almost feels like I have regressed to that age where, my parents are yelling at me to get up, or, they're still making my meals and like situating meal times. And so it's been really weird because as someone who craves and wants independence, you kind of have to start setting those boundaries with your parents about, don't come into my room if I'm in a meeting or if I'm in class, because my mom is the type of person that will just fling my door open and expect me to have nothing going on.
Yeah, no, I think I relate to that so hard because my mom's the exact same type of person, and she'll be the type of mom to like knock and open at the same time. And then
my mom doesn't even knock, like she just flings it open.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm so glad I have a lock on my door, but I think that, oh my God, there was one time where I locked my door because I was in a meeting, and then my mom literally knocked for like 20 seconds. Like, she just kept on knocking and banging, and then she kept on trying to open the door, and then she thought I like died or something. And then I had to like mute myself and be like, Mom, I'm in a meeting. Like, that's why I locked my door. But anyways, moving on, I think I've definitely over the last year like established boundaries with my parents. Like, I definitely had that same conversation, like, don't come into my room when I'm working, or like, like if you want to talk to me during work hours, like text me instead.
Yeah, if you want,
I feel like I sound like a monster right now.
Yeah, if you want to book time with me, you got to check my schedule and book a week in advance to schedule some time with me.
I promise I'm really nice to my parents, okay? I'm a really good daughter. But yeah, I definitely feel like even though I have been able to live at home quite peacefully, there have been a lot of moments in the last year where I have had like little outbursts, whether it was with my parents or like mentally in my head, of just feeling like I need to be completely independent, like just feeling like I need that alone time. And I think we were both talking about this earlier, where like we're both people who need to recharge alone. Like, we can't constantly be surrounded by people because we we need time to process those emotions.
Yeah, exactly. Like almost think of a way in where you're like processing large amounts of data and you just need to sit there, hunker down and kind of like figure out what's going on and even like decipher your own thoughts because sometimes I'll just feel emotions and I don't know where they're coming from in the moment, but I have to kind of sit back and realize, okay, maybe it's because I was stressed about this thing earlier and I literally cannot do that when I'm trying to have a conversation with another person because I think during those times where I'm already stressed out, like someone else's breathing could even annoy me.
Yeah, like I completely relate to that. I feel like the worst quality about myself is that when I'm stressed, I'm like a terrible person to be around. I feel like I can mask it with like friends and coworkers and keep it like pretty chill, but like on the inside or like when I'm with people who I can let my guard down with, like they truly see how much of a nightmare I am to be around when I'm stressed. And it's just not good. So I am definitely conscious of it and trying to work towards it, but also being aware that like this is kind of who I am as a person. So me being alone when I'm stressed is like the best way to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not a, sunshine to be around even when you're not stressed. So,
Wow, thanks, Cindy. Really
no
appreciate
problem. Yeah,
that.
I think one of my weaknesses is that I just can't lie. But yeah, I guess we were talking about setting boundaries and kind of, I know you told me about this, but what's something you've been doing that's actually establishing a little more independence when you're living with your parents?
Yeah, so I have started to pay my parents' rent while living at home. And the reason why is actually just because they pay a lot of things for me. Like they pay my car insurance, my phone bill, and obviously, like while living with them, I'm using their water and electricity and eating all the food in the house. So I kind of felt bad moving back and knowing that they paid all these things for me and I like was just kind of leeching off of them. And obviously like if you are in that position, like don't feel bad. But like for me, I was making money and like I had a job. So like I had the means to like I guess pay them rent. And obviously I'm not paying them like exorbitant downtown rent fees, but I think that it makes me feel a little better that I'm like offloading some of my financial burden that I'm having on them and also like probably helping them towards retiring. So that is something that I've been doing to establish that piece of independence for myself. But yeah, Cindy, how about you? Like, have you been doing anything to be more independent while you're living at home?
Yeah, I think like something that I've been doing is be kind of like a productive member of the household if that's a good way to say it because like as a kid you've done chores around the house and you've tried to like help out your parents with certain things like doing dishes whatever, but I think like now I'm taking a little bit more responsibility where I'm like, okay, so this particular task, like for example doing the laundry, it's all me, I will handle all of it. Or like I will specifically go out and get groceries for my entire family, and then certain meals I will always like cook and like or I will
Order the macas.
yeah, or I will order in. I was just gonna say but yeah, certain meals have become my responsibility and it's kind of where you transition from being like a dependent or a child of the household to like actually an adult that's living here as well. I'll pay for the groceries myself or I'll pay for food. And my parents used to like send me money and be like, here's your allowance because you're living away from home. But now it's more that I will just dip into my savings from working or something like that to just try and contribute a little bit. Unlike Eamon, I'm not a full-time, contributing member of society yet. But I think once I do start full-time, I will also be paying them rent. And, my parents can really decide what they want to do with that money. Like, they can either use it to make investments or like I know I've read online that a lot of parents actually save that money from when their children paid them rent and when their child buys their first house, they'll take that and use that to help them with the deposit. And I'm, really hoping that my parents do that.
Honestly, it's funny that you mentioned that because that is exactly what my mom said that she was going to do. Like
Mm,
every month when I e-transfer her the rent, but when we agreed on this back in, I want to say like July or June of 2020,
mm,
she was like, yeah, like you're paying us this, but don't worry, like I'm going to put this into a separate savings account for you so that I can, help you pay off like whatever in the future. And I was like, no, like don't do that. Like just use it, like I'm paying you this because you're already spending money on me because I'm living with you. So like just use it. But she was like, no, 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 I'll save it up, which I thought was really, really sweet. But like I still pay it to her because I think it's also like nice as thinking from her perspective to know like she has this extra bit of cash like in case she needs it.
yeah. And I feel like it's also like an Asian parent pride thing where they're like, I will never accept money from my children. And like my parents definitely have that. Like my mom used to fight me on like grocery bills because she's like, how much money did you spend? And I wouldn't tell her, and she would just e-transfer me a chunk of money, and I would get so mad. I would be like, you think I am desolate? Like I've made money. Like I have savings. Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just buying food for the fam, right? But now I've realized that the way to combat this is that I'll just buy things for the house, or I'll buy things for her, and I'll say they're a gift. Like, so you can't e-transfer me back because I bought this as a gift for you. And so she feels like, okay, fine, but don't do this again.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think like my dad is very much that mentality. And to some extent I feel like my mom's a little more westernized, but like also has that mentality too. So yeah, like there's definitely that weird dichotomy of paying rent to your Asian parents.
Yeah, and I guess we've kind of talked about this already, but like this is one step of adulting, but I think like the biggest, I guess, transformation or like standard is like work, right? Like once you're an adult, you're kind of expected to start working, start earning that bank. But I guess it's a little different for us since we've done internships the whole time since we were part of university, right?
Yeah, and I think that internships help set you up for the workplace and probably put you miles ahead of someone who's like never worked a day in their life starting a
Mm-hmm.
full-time job. So I'm definitely glad that we both had those experiences. But let me tell you, like there are so many differences when it comes to full-time and internships. Like first of all, I think the biggest difference that I've realized is that there is no definitive end. Like the only way that I'm getting out of this job is if I find a new one. And we all know how hard recruiting is. So we can even just make that another whole entire episode in and of itself. But yeah, you're just stuck here forever. And so for me, I like that because I know I'm like everything that I'm doing today, I'm working towards something. Like whether it's like the next promotion or the next whatever, like it's like all going towards something and not going to waste. But being in an internship, of course, like it's so much less pressure, I guess, because you're only in it for a couple months, and you know that even though you're trying to impress your managers, like you're gonna be out of that job once you start school again, and there's no long-term consequences for any of your actions.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like I treat internships as kind of like a risk-free trial of adulting because you kind of have the same benefits where you're like making money, you're going to work, but you're not a full-fledged adult yet. So people kind of treat you differently. Like they don't expect as much as they would for a regular worker. And I think that's something that I actually really hated about internships because people always treated me like an intern, no matter if they said, oh, don't feel like you're just an intern, you're here to contribute. But I would always feel like people would treat me as if I wasn't there long term. And that's true. Like I wouldn't be contributing in the long term, but then I wouldn't be privy to probably the same meetings or, like people would get my opinion as kind of like a afterthought. And while that is true for interns, I feel like that's something that I'm really looking forward to for full time, where you're, like you said, in it for the long term. There is no end in sight, and you can be sure that whatever you do, it's going to, have lasting impact.
I actually really like the fact that you brought up that point because that's actually one of the biggest differences I've noticed in the workplace. Like now, people take me way more seriously, and it's almost surprising how much like responsibility they give me sometimes because I'm like so used to being the intern that was there for the afterthought, was there just to like take the notes and do the little changes in the slide deck. And then now, like, being a contributing member of your company, like I think it's like a lot different. And of course, like I'm still doing tasks that an intern would do because I'm only 3 months in, but yeah, like it's really nice to be part of the team and like to know that the people that you're meeting, you don't have to say goodbye to them.
Wait, that's really important as well because I feel like for almost all of my previous internships, I've kind of lost contact with my like work friends, right? Because we went from seeing each other every day to not seeing each other at all, and we kind of knew those relationships weren't going to be lasting because we were just there for the summer, or even for example, this year online. I've never even met any of my coworkers, and we've kind of just fallen out of touch. But I'm excited to, step into the workplace and, meet some really great work friends and, even my work husband or my work wife. I'm really looking forward to that.
I feel like when you say that, you literally want to find someone to marry in your company.
No, so a work husband or a work wife, actually, for people that are confused, is not a romantic relationship, but almost like a work partnership that you can always depend on. So
Oh gosh, I totally agree. I think that during the summers, I've always been able to make really good friendships.
mhm.
And those people from work, like they were some of my closest friends, like at the time, like in the moment.
Yeah.
But then as soon as it ends, like you kind of lose touch, or like you'll respond to each other's Instagram stories, or, like message each other for their birthdays. But like other than that, like there's no other way that you're really keeping that constant connection.
Yeah, exactly. And I almost feel like internship friends are friends by convenience because you're basically forced to interact with them for, like you said, like 8 to 12 hours a day. And like there's a lot of things you can talk about because you're there in the same situation, but afterwards it's just difficult to maintain.
Okay, so that's a really good point because right now with the pandemic, obviously you don't have those same social events that we had when we were interning at our companies in the summertime. So you don't get those chances to really become friends with the people that you're working with because a Zoom meeting will only go so far. So I've actually been kind of finding it difficult to make those connections in the workplace for full time. And I feel like the friends that I have made that I do, text from time to time, like I only talk to them for work things and when I need something. And with them, it's like the same way. Like they'll only talk to me if they need something. Like I remember for previous summers when we actually got to hang out with each other in social settings, like at restaurants or bars, like we would honestly get to know like every single detail of their personal life. And it was really fun to like be able to meet these kinds of people and have like, I feel like in the workplace, you just meet such different people
Hmm.
and you're friends with people that you just wouldn't be friends with in university. But yeah, I guess I'm kind of sad that we don't have those same opportunities anymore.
Okay, so actually, something just popped up in my mind. So I was thinking about discrepancies and maybe something that I'm a little scared about is the work-life balance. And I know everyone says that, work-life balance is scam because, you gotta work hard when you start first. But I think the pandemic and especially work from home has kind of blurred the boundaries of, work and life even more. And so, how have you kind of been navigating that?
Yeah, like I truly believe that there is no better time than the pandemic to be working because you're not feeling FOMO about anything. And a lot of my friends who've also started full time, like they have insane work schedules. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But at the same time, I completely agree that it is very hard to maintain a work life balance. And it's very hard to say no, especially when you're on a project and the manager or senior manager is asking you to do something by end of day. And you know that to get it done by end of day, you're going to be having to work until 11:59 p.m. So yeah, it's like, it's definitely hard, and everyone is working from home now, so everyone knows that like there is no excuse, you know. Before, like, you can say things like, oh, I'm going to the cottage for the weekend, or actually I would never say that, but like, oh, like I'm going on a weekend trip, you know, like I'll be offline for the weekend. But like now, like you can't say that excuse because like everyone will know that you're not going anywhere. So yeah, like I definitely feel like going back to the saying no, like knowing what's important to you. And honestly, for me, like I know that work is pretty important to me, and being able to like do a good job and have a good reputation and all of that is important. So if it is for like client work, then I'm probably not going to say no. But that's just because like right now I don't have much else going on in my life.
Wow, that ended on a really sad note. But I think honestly, this entire conversation is probably a little skewed because both Yimin and I are total workaholics. Like, we will actually prioritize work over a lot of things. And maybe that's something that will get even worse because now you could be working 24/7. So, definitely looking forward to getting back to the office, not only for that, office snack bar and coffee machine, but also just to be able to leave that environment and say I'm offline, like starting at a certain point in time.
Exactly. And I feel like we're both the type of people who will go crazy if we don't have anything to do. So like if we know that there's something productive that we can be doing, like we'll probably do it. Um so that's also something that is an us issue. And if you have any tips, please let us know.
Yeah, honestly, this makes us seem really sad because it's like there's nothing going on in our lives except for work. But that is true. Like we're always like hustling, and I think it's really the hustle mentality, right? I know, for example, for both of us before starting our full-time roles, we actually ended up like finding contract roles just because we didn't want to, leave our summers kind of blank. But
Yeah, I was going to say just because we didn't want to relax.
yeah.
I feel like, yeah, like how was it for you, like deciding that you wanted to work in the one summer that you had left before starting full time?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't an easy decision, but it was kind of a decision that was made for me because I know originally, like everyone else, I had a lot of plans to go on exchange and do my grad trip this summer to like fully relax before I am chained onto the corporate ladder. But I think like at the end of the day, I realized that this was also coincidentally like the last chance that I would get to do something that was not what I was working full time for. And so I think I prioritized that experience over like relaxing or whatever because like I feel like there will always be time to relax when I retire. So I would rather do it then than versus now when I do have the energy and especially have the time to either learn a new skill, be part of a new industry, or to even just like prepare myself for my full time role.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I remember last year when I graduated, I did relax. Like, I wasn't working all of April, May, June, and July. And for those 4 months, I thought I was going to go crazy from how much relaxing that I was doing. Like, I felt like a full-time soccer mom without any kids. So all I did was yoga and walks and read. And there's only so much of that you can do every day before you actually get bored of being relaxed. And then now, flash forward, I'm like at this point where like I haven't taken a nap in like months and I can't relax because I actually have too much to do.
Yeah, and I think like we're actually the happiest when we're actually the busiest, as like masochistic as that sounds. And like one of the questions that I actually wanted to ask was also like thinking back, when I guess were you the happiest and why do you think that was?
This is an interesting question because I think like for me, happiness isn't really a state of being. Like for me, it's just an emotion. So how I think about this question is like, when in my life have I been the most at peace with myself? And to me, that's like being happy, because I'm like at peace with who I am and I'm at peace with everything that's going on in my life. And to answer this question, I think it would be this past year. Thinking back on like all of my years of life, like, yeah, I was definitely happy in all those years for some moments, but I think this past year has definitely been the most reflective year of my life, and I've been able to come to terms with a lot of aspects that I may have been insecure about or anxious about or just unsure about. And now I think I've finally come to peace with those things, like whether it was friendships or relationships or just like self-love. Like I feel like one thing was, and I think we'll get into this in other episodes, but like one thing was I had always struggled with like liking how I looked for maybe like the past like 5 years. But this past year, maybe it's because no one's seeing me, but this past year, I feel like I've come to terms with like my body and I've actually just accepted it. And I feel like I don't feel that insecurity anymore. And to me, that's like me reaching a state of happiness. So yeah, I think my answer would be this past year. How about you, Cindy?
I think I will have to agree with you that I don't see happiness as like really a goal or like an extended period of time. I think happiness is a byproduct of an action that I do. And usually when I feel the happiest is honestly closely tied with my sense of, I guess, security and accomplishment. And I will have to agree that this last year has probably when I've gone through the most growth mentally, and probably the same as you, like a lot of reflection. But I still think that like my happiest year would probably be like when I was in grade 12, and where you think or you thought you knew exactly who you were, and you had this kind of road that was paved out in front of you, but that was still filled with possibility, right? And you're kind of embarking on this like university journey. By then you're pretty much really secure with your group of friends, and it's just a sense of like security and knowing what you're doing next that I really enjoyed. And also there was really little stress during that period of time because you've completed your schoolwork, all your uni apps are done, and you're just kind of relaxing and having fun, and I really enjoyed that. But I don't know, I think like that period of time was really necessary for me. But if I were to say, I don't know, go on vacation for like 4 months like I did in grade 12, or like have nothing to do and just relax, I would probably go insane now. And that's probably because I'm also a very different person than I was in grade 12. And so I think my sense of happiness now is very different. Huh.
Yeah, like that's I completely see that. And when you were describing like your grade 12, like that brought me flashbacks of grade 12, and I think that was also a happy time for me. And I think like when we're younger, our threshold for happiness is lower because we have less experiences, and we also like I guess we don't allow ourselves to experience like all of life or all of what life has to offer when we're so young. And the older that we get, the reason why our threshold for happiness goes higher is because we know there's so much out there. Like we know what the potential is. And so if we get to that potential, like we're happier.
Yeah, but I think there's also the flip side of this is because we know there's so much out there, like we're experiencing something where we're probably never going to be fully satisfied in a lot of areas of our life, just because we know there's always something better. There's always like a higher goal or something you can achieve. And that just really sucks. As children, we were probably like, on average, happier than we were now because we were just so easily satisfied with our everyday lives. But now, not even saying like because of society or whatever, but because of ourselves and, maybe our ambitions or our goals, we're constantly in a journey to find the next best thing. And that's almost really sad to think about because I'll look forward to certain things in my life in the next perhaps 10 years, but I can't see, for example, like this is when I'll be satisfied. Like this is the point in my life where I can just lay back and just not care anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that I'll never get to that point ever again. Maybe when I retire. But even then, like, I don't think I'd ever get to that point because you just know how much life can offer you
Mm-hmm.
and what the potential is. And I just think that, yeah, it sucks, but also there's so much that is at our fingertips, you know? Like, I feel like there's so much potential for all of us to just achieve whatever we wanted to achieve when we were like 10 years old. And now it's like just up to us to get it. And I think that it's scary, obviously, and it's a lot of like responsibility at your fingertips too. But like, yeah, like I just think that the world is truly our oyster. And call me an optimist, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, as the realist of the duo, I'm gonna have to say that I want to call you out on your optimism. But also, I think this interestingly brought up where I think a lot of my happiness was hinged on myself when I was growing up. Like what I did made me happy, or like what when something happened to me, I was happy. But I think as I'm growing older, a lot of my happiness is contingent on the people around me, and like not so much that they make me happy or what how they impact me, but like my happiness is I want better for example, my family or my friends or the people around me. And that's kind of like, I guess, a part of growing up. Like you're less almost selfish and you care more about other people and their happiness as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, I probably shouldn't disclose this, but when it's 11:11 and time to make a wish, like a lot of my wishes will always be like about my family members. Like I feel like when I was younger, I'd always wish for myself to achieve something. But now it's like, no, like
Mhm.
the happiness of like the people around me is just as important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've realized that especially this year, like I think during the pandemic, like you and I have had a lot of conversations about our goals and ambitions, and increasingly I'm realizing that we're adding, thoughts about our parents and friends into the mix. And like, a lot of our goals are also associated with our parents and our lives in that sense. And I know you told me one of your huge goals was I think doing over your basement or something. And like for you to have a goal like that versus, a typical like 17-year-old to be like, my goal is I want this for me, right? And that was just something really cool to witness. Also made me lament on the fact that we're both really fucking old now. But
I love how you remember that. And like, yeah, like I definitely want to renovate my parents' basement. And I've told them that over the last year. Like I want to pay for it. I want to like do the design plan. Like I want to do this for you guys because like we're gonna probably live in this house for the rest of our lives. So want it to be good. But yeah, like I think opposite to the question that you asked then, like this is just a little spicy one, but which year was the most unhappiest for you?
I mean, I think I've already told this to all of my friends, but I truly think, interestingly enough, my unhappiest year was the year right after grade 12 where I was the happiest. And I would say first year university. And I think a lot of it was associated with growing pains and uncertainty. So like my happiness comes from security versus, other people who may come from spontaneity. But I think like in first year university, a lot of things were super uncertain. I kind of lost sight of who I was and wanted to be, and losing that direction was really detrimental to not only like my mental health but also just my way of processing happiness. Like things that maybe used to make me happy were now kind of confusing for me, or like, oh, I was like, oh, I didn't want this anymore, or this doesn't bring me joy anymore. And it was really like navigating through that and figuring out, maybe setting a new goal, that I was able to kind of turn it around. But I do remember probably like my entire life being the most unhappy with not only myself, but I think just the entire world during first year. But it's not even that I was stressed or like that I had a lot of work going on, unlike, maybe like last year where I was like literally stressed because of work. Yeah, it was just a different sense of unhappiness, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually relate a lot to that. Maybe we bonded so well in first year because we were both so unhappy.
I was just gonna say I was really unhappy in first year, but then I met you, man.
um, yeah, so I would also say like my most unhappy year was either like it's a tie, honestly, between between first year and third year.
Oh.
And I think the reason why is because like I relate so much to what you said, like that period of like just not really knowing where you stand and like having this whole new environment thrown at you and you're just like trying to like swim in the deep end, but you don't know how to swim. So essentially you're drowning.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt like I was drowning a little bit in first year and in third year for different reasons. I think like in first year, it was just like how new everything was, like going into an environment where I had no friends and just like trying to figure it out. Versus like third year, it was like the drowning of like so much work, being in a new environment where I also had like very little friends in my section at least. And just having to like navigate that. So I think those 2 years, and also like when I tie it back to like my answer that I gave for how I look at happiness, like I think first year and third year I wasn't really at peace with myself and who I was as a person. Like I wasn't completely happy with how I looked. I wasn't happy with my study habits. Like it was just a lot of self-growth that I still needed to do in those years to get to who I am today.
Yeah, no, I definitely 100% back that. Like, I think a lot of your happiness is tied to your perception of self. And if that wavers or something, disturbs that, you feel very unsettled. And it's very difficult to find joy and happiness when you don't know who you yourself are, right? And yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. And I think you just put it in a much better way than I did. But now that we've kind of talked about the past and what we went through, now as adults, I guess the question is the same, but what are you looking forward to the most about being an adult?
I guess like I'll think of this in a post-pandemic world because apparently we're all supposed to get our first vaccine by July 1st. So I think like what I'm most looking forward to is that sense of freedom, and I'm so excited for the day that I can like move out into my condo, assuming that downtown, lifestyles are going to go back to how it was pre-pandemic. Like I really am looking forward to like living with a roommate and, working on a podcast with her in the living room. Oh my God, everyone's like throwing up at this point. But yeah, like I think I'm just excited to like have my life start up again in a way, like have my social life at least start up again. And like I think this pandemic really like showed me who my real friends are. And I feel like this is so savage, but like I'm genuinely so excited to like be able to hang out with like my real friends after this pandemic.
Okay, guess we're not hanging out then, Eamon. Yeah, no, I agree with that too. I think freedom and independence are like top things about being an adult. And it's not even the little things where it's like 10 a.m. and my mom barges in and asks me why I'm not awake, because all CEOs wake up at 6 a.m. apparently.
I love how my mom says the exact same thing.
Yeah. How can you succeed in life when you can't even wake up in the morning? Well, I'm gonna show you how, mom. But yeah,
defying all odds.
I think I'm really looking forward to having my own space. Like I think as we've mentioned before, like we're both people that need our own space and that kind of independence in a sense. And I'm really looking forward to decorating my room from scratch and just kind of starting actually a lot of things from scratch, right? Like decorating a room or like starting a new hobby or like figuring out my commute to work, even like those things, like those first times that I'll have to navigate by myself are really precious, I think, especially thinking about it in a post-pandemic reality. Like I will feel even more thankful about being able to do these things.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like also having the money to travel, like not having the vacation, but having the money to at least do it and figuring out the vacation days as you're, in that process. But I think like I'm also really excited to like see the world after the pandemic is over. And I feel like when we were kids, like, I don't know, I didn't travel much as a kid. Maybe it was just because like there was always Maybe it was because you had to have an adult to travel with you as a kid, and my parents like had to take vacation to do that. So yeah, like I just am so excited to like be able to do that alone or like with friends.
Yeah, almost like the opposite of you. I feel like I traveled a lot growing up because my mom's job was a lot more flexible and she always like took me traveling and she was like, "Cindy, this is the world. So never, settle for less than what you see." And that was like a huge part of my education growing up and like going to different places, being more of a global citizen. And I think I really want to be able to do that for myself now. And in a way, like being an adult gives you the financial capacity to make plans into reality. And that's something that I will really enjoy because I have a lot of things that I want to do. And in a totally like probably materialistic sense too, there's a lot of things I want to buy. And not only just for myself, but I think for my friends and family as well, right? This goes back into like thinking a lot about others. Like I always see things and I always wish I had more money to work with so that I can, treat my mom to that jacket that she's been looking at, or like I'll notice like, oh, my dad needs a new pair of shoes, or like, oh, I really want to like buy a house for my parents to retire in. Like the big goals that I'm thinking about, like I'm excited to be able to not only just think about them, but actually like put money towards that to make it into a reality.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're like already thinking about huge things like that. Like, I feel like I am thinking about myself, and you are inspiring me to be selfless. Um, but yeah, like I completely agree. I think that like this is honestly like the start of the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Oh, God. You saying that makes it like, yes, this is it. Like the defining decade actually starts when you're 23. So
Honestly, I wish the defining decade would start when we're like 25 because I'm not ready for any of that to start yet.
yeah, I don't want to do any defining just about now.
Yeah, just more exploring.
Okay, but not to end off on a bad note, but maybe like a funny note. What's probably the worst thing that you think about when you're thinking about an adulting thing?
Okay, so I think one thing that I am for but totally against at the same time is income tax. And yeah, like I definitely know that we have to have it and I see the benefits to our greater society, but like seeing that deposit into your savings account every 2 weeks and knowing what it would be pre-tax versus after tax just really hurts a little. So I think that's like probably the worst thing is just like honestly all the finances that come with being an adult, like not only having to pay exorbitant amounts of tax, but like figuring out like when you should be putting money into your RRSP and like should you invest in ETFs or mutual funds or like honestly just like planning for those big financial purchases that we want to make. And I think that is something that is hard and stressful, but at the same time rewarding when you figure it out. How about you, Cindy?
Yeah, I was gonna go with something funny, like not being able to take a nap whenever you want.
I love how you're like, let's not end on a serious note, and then I bring in taxes.
But no, so I'm gonna have to change my answer now to something real. But I have to agree on the taxes front, and I think financial literacy in general, like it's so difficult learning that side of things when you weren't taught about this in school. Meanwhile, you learned that mitochondria was the powerhouse of the cell, but you're not learning about taxes and how to pay them. But I think also just like things that I won't consider now, I will have to start thinking about. Like I think I've lived in a luxury where my parents thought about a lot of things for me, and made some like decisions for me. And maybe I won't know what they are until I have to do them myself. But just kind of the inconvenience of independence almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a million things that we have to think about. And yeah, I guess that's just all the trials and tribulations of being an adult.
I hate that so much.
Okay, thank you so much for listening to our second episode of We Hate Small Talk. Hopefully you enjoyed this, or we were great background noise for your workday.
Yeah, and if you're undergoing this adulting struggle the same as us, please share your stories with us and follow us on social media. Our Instagram handle is at We Hate Small Talk.
Okay, until next time.
Bye.
Bye.